You might not like what I'm about to say, and you might not agree with it. You might even not be right, but okay. Maybe, just maybe, the golden era of squash has passed. Back in the late 60s, 70s and early 80s, squash in the UK was absolutely booming. It was everywhere. It was on terrestrial TV on a Saturday afternoon sometimes. There were more clubs than you could count. Well, okay, obviously not more than you could count, but where I used to live, I had about a 20-minute drive to about 5 or 6 different clubs. Now, unfortunately, all but one of those clubs is closed. Okay, so that's a very UK-centric idea. Maybe in other places it's not the same. I have to admit that when you see the facilities in the United States of how they're building these places, they look absolutely fantastic. So maybe in the US, squash is booming. Maybe in other parts. Poland seems to be quite popular for squash at the moment, and maybe other parts. But at the same time, there are other places going down. But I'm going to use the word trendy. Trendy. Squash doesn't seem to be trendy anymore. Squash is a fantastic sport and it always has been a fantastic sport, but it's competing with so many other sports. It also seems to be a little bit expensive. When I go back to the UK and I ask to, rent a court in Harrow Leisure Centre, which is not far from where I grew up, it was like £10 or £12 for 40 minutes. And then when I go down and visit my mother near Portsmouth and I see how much like a court cost there, it was £15. £15 for 40 minutes. Sure, that's 2 people paying it. And maybe compared to other sports, it's really good value. But it just seems like a huge amount of money to me. So maybe there's lots of reasons that squash isn't as popular as it used to be. And I don't believe that we should be chasing the Olympics and worrying about some things like that. And squash, the real question here is, why is squash not in the media more? Now, it should be on the TV more because it's a great sport to play. But does that translate to a great sport to watch? Now, I've mentioned this a few times before. Personally, I don't think squash is that interesting to watch for a non-player, and I think that that's really important. And that's not to say that squash isn't interesting to watch if you love playing sport or you love playing squash, but I've said it before, my mother watches Wimbledon. She's never played tennis in her life. There are lots of people who watch football, association football, who don't play. Maybe they played as a kid, but now they don't play anymore. So we've got this disconnect between who watches it and who plays it. And if sport is only popular or only interesting to watch if you play it, then it's never going to have a huge amount of appeal for the TV. Good example perhaps would be fishing. I believe that more people go fishing regularly in the UK than play football. Yeah, when was the last time you saw multi-billion-dollar contracts for TV rights for fishing? Never. Have you ever seen fishing on the TV? Yeah, maybe there's like some of those programs where they go around the world and they catch these huge fish, but just like 3 or 4 people sitting on a riverbank. Oh, George, how you doing? All right? Yeah, not bad, mate. You? Yeah. Oh, caught fish. It doesn't happen. Nobody watches fishing. I love fishing. Well, I did as a child. But the point I'm trying to make is this disconnect between it. And I'm only talking about TV now, but maybe squash is not in the media because it's not on the TV, so it's not in magazines. Yes, we got Squash Player magazine, but it's not featured in the magazines. It's not mentioned in the local newspapers very much. We're not getting, eyes onto this sport, and that can be really, really important. I recognise that being in the Olympics would give squash a boost because it would be on the TV. And I recognise that. I just think that, at some point we have to say maybe we shouldn't be focused too much on the Olympics. And when the Commonwealth Games were on, I was in the UK and I was at a club night and somebody came up and said, look, this is my first time. And I was like, oh, great, let me help you a little bit. And I said, well, what made you come? And he said, oh, I saw it on a TV. And that was like, okay, yeah, it really does make a difference. So if squash was in the media more, we'd get more players. Would we get more players because it's in the media? It's this like chicken and egg situation. Is it in the media because there's lots of players? Are there lots of players because it's in the media? And the answer is no, because as we mentioned with fishing. So what is it? Is it the fact that a sport doesn't look good on TV? Is it the fact that squash, I don't think, is represented very well on TV? And that's not a criticism of squash TV. I think those guys do a great job and those girls do a great job. It's just maybe the sport, the dynamism, is that a word? The dynamic aspect of squash, how fast they move, the skill involved, the difference between how hard they hit the ball and how soft they hit the ball, just doesn't come across. It's not represented very well in TV. So, God, I've just been rambling, I know, and I'm sorry. So that question is, why do you think that squash is not in the media, whether it's TV, whether it's magazines, whether it's on the radio? Why is it not so much compared to other sports? Is there something intrinsic about squash that makes it not so good? Is squash just lost its trendiness? There are other sports, like Red Bull's sort of X Games has become huge now, and all of those things. Is it just not visually appealing? And the only way to solve that is to get people, to get children playing it, because we can't convince them so much by looking at it. They have to be on court. Perhaps that's the ultimate key. Participation is more important than media coverage. I don't know. What do you think? And sorry for the rambling, really, sorry. On the screen at the moment, somewhere up here, is a playlist of all of the other questions for you to look at, and probably down here somewhere is another video that YouTube thinks is a really good fit for you, and probably down here is a subscription button. If and only if you think my content is useful, please consider subscribing. And remember, do something every single day to improve your squash. See ya.